My mother-in-law was pregnant with her second child at 57. Given her diabetes and high blood pressure, I persuaded her to terminate the pregnancy for her own health, but I never imagined my husband would later die in a car accident, and despite all their efforts, my in-laws could never conceive again. They blamed me for ending their family line and laced my water with paraquat. I died in agony, with organ failure and pulmonary fibrosis, ultimately suffocating to death. When I opened my eyes again, I had gone back to the day my mother-in-law announced her pregnancy. I said with a smile, "Mom, after you give birth, I'll take care of you during your confinement." Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law looked somewhat uncomfortable. Jason also looked visibly uncomfortable. Seeing that no one spoke up, my father-in-law cleared his throat and said, "Whether to keep this child or not is your decision. Your mother, and I will respect whatever you choose." My mother-in-law quickly added, "Yes, whatever you decide, we won't object." That's what they said, but if they really didn't want this child, they could have just gone to the hospital themselves. Why bother asking for our opinion? Is an old oyster producing a pearl really something to boast about? Unfortunately, in my past life, I failed to see through it and even worried about my mother-in-law's health. I meticulously laid out the risks of childbirth to her one by one, and in the end, she got scared and had an abortion at the hospital. Then Jason asked me, "Honey, what do you think? What's your take?" What do I think? Of course, I'll count them off on my fingers for you just like I did in my past life. Mom, Annie, Renee Liu, Gigi Lai, and Andy Lau's wife. All these celebrities had kids in their 40s or 50s, around your age, Mom. And wasn't there a woman in her 60s who gave birth to twins a few years back? Her eyes lit up as she said, "Yes. I've heard about that too. Those twins are in elementary school now." My father-in-law chimed in, "I've heard about this too." I laughed and said, "Mom, Dad, let me be clear. I fully support your decision to have a second child. Once the baby arrives, I'll take care of you during your postpartum recovery." The moment those words were spoken, all three of them were stunned. My in-laws said they needed more time to think it over. But the next moment they were already enthusiastically discussing the baby's gender and potential names. As soon as we got back to the room, Jason's cheerful expression instantly turned sour. He frowned at me disapprovingly and asked, "Are you really going to let them have this baby? They're not exactly spring chickens. How many years could they actually raise a child? We'd end up being responsible for it eventually, wouldn't we? Do you have any idea how much it costs to raise a child these days? Plus, we'll have our own kids someday too. The financial strain will be even worse then." I looked at him in disbelief and shot back, "If you don't agree, why didn't you say something to Mom and Dad earlier?" He hesitated, then retorted, "It's not that I disagree, I'm just worried about what people might say. Mom and Dad having a baby at their age." I said calmly, "Mom and Dad are in good health. I don't see any reason why they can't live another 20 years. They both have pensions and savings, so raising a child wouldn't be much of a burden. If they want to have another kid, let them. As for outsiders, it's not like they're eating the family's rice. Why should we care what they think?" Jason rolled his eyes in annoyance. "It's not as easy as you make it sound. Anyway, if you don't agree, just tell Mom and Dad yourself." I have no objections. Without another word, I got into bed, closed my eyes, and pretended to be asleep. Jason loves playing the nice guy. No matter what happens, he never openly objects, just manipulates others into doing his dirty work. Take my past self, for example, but he'll die in a car accident soon anyway, so there's no point wasting energy on him. The only risk now lies with the doctor. My mother-in-law is already 57 and has underlying health conditions. The doctor is bound to inform her of the risks. How can I ensure that she keeps the baby, even if she knows it could harm her health? My thoughts were all jumbled up until Jason lay down beside me, and a sudden idea popped into my head. How could I forget? Jason is the perfect excuse. The next morning, I asked my boss for time off and went to the hospital, to get the results as quickly as possible. I specifically chose a private hospital and spent a fortune on a full-body checkup before Jason got off work. I took the medical report to my parents-in-law. "Mom, Dad, your pregnancy news reminded me. Jason and I have been married for over 2 years now, but I still haven't been able to get pregnant. That's why I went to the hospital today to get checked." I laid the report out for them to see, too. The doctor said my ovaries and uterus are normal, and all the other tests came back fine. I pretended to be upset and said, "The doctor said since there's nothing wrong with me, then the problem must be with Jason." Actually, the doctor only mentioned that both partners need to be checked if we're having trouble conceiving. That part was just my little white lie to them. My in-laws grew anxious too, quickly putting on their reading glasses to scrutinize every single one of my medical reports. After reviewing them, both my father-in-law and mother-in-law were struggling to come to terms with the results. My mother-in-law asked, "Is there any treatment available?" I shook my head. It's most likely azoospermia. The doctor said it's untreatable. My mother-in-law looked utterly devastated. I know about this illness, she said. Rita, who dances in the square with me, her son has it too. They spent over $100,000 and still couldn't cure him. I heard the couple is on the verge of divorce now. I looked at my mother-in-law with emotion and said, I'm so relieved you're pregnant now, Mom. Otherwise, Jason's family line would have ended with him. The moment they heard the words family line ending, both my father-in-law and mother-in-law stiffened, their expressions turning grave. My father-in-law grasped my mother-in-law's hand, his tone resolute. We must have this child, he declared firmly. My mother-in-law patted her belly and nodded repeatedly. I quickly reassured them, Dad, Mom, don't worry, once the baby is born, I'll raise my brother as if he were my own son. Then I pleaded with them, please don't tell Jason about his illness. It would be devastating for a man to hear this. I'm afraid he couldn't handle it. My in-laws agreed without hesitation. During the prenatal checkup, the doctor did indeed advise the elderly couple to terminate the pregnancy, but the couple remained adamant, throwing a tantrum and accusing the doctor of being heartless and unethical, even threatening to call the media. The doctor was at his wit's end. The commotion eventually drew in the head of obstetrics and even the hospital director. The hospital patiently showed them case studies, research papers, and the latest statistics on advanced maternal age, including risks of intellectual disabilities in children, maternal paralysis, and even cases where both mother and child tragically died. But the in-laws only focused on the rare success stories, convinced they would be the exception, with no other choice. The hospital finally admitted the elderly mother as a high-risk pregnancy case. The in-laws returned home strutting like triumphant victors. Jason frowned. Mom, the doctors warned you about the risks at your age. Why are you being so stubborn about this? My mother-in-law also got upset. What could possibly go wrong? Hospitals just love to scare people. Besides, when I asked for your opinion earlier, you didn't object, did you? Jason paused, then put on a worried expression. It's not that I object, I'm just concerned about you. She brushed it off. There's absolutely nothing wrong with my health, you can rest easy, she reassured him like coaxing a child. Son, don't you worry, even if I have another baby, you'll always be my favorite, you're the eldest son of this family, no one will ever come before you, his father-in-law said pointedly. We're having this child for your sake too. When he grows up, he'll take care of you, unaware of his azoospermia. Jason flushed with anger at these words and snapped, I don't need him to take care of me. Aren't you ashamed of yourselves at your age? This is downright embarrassing. I don't approve of this. Go get an abortion. Now, don't expect me to support you in your old age if you keep this up. The mother-in-law stared at him in disbelief. He's your own brother. How can you be so heartless? My father-in-law slammed the table angrily and said, if you're so capable, have your own child. Otherwise, we're definitely keeping this one. Fortunately, Jason didn't suspect anything. Instead, he made a deal with his parents that if he had a child, they would immediately terminate their pregnancy. That night, he told me, starting today, we're not using protection anymore. I refuse to believe that my parents can get pregnant at their age while we can't. Just wait, I'll have you pregnant within a month, guaranteed. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. He still didn't know the other woman was pregnant at the time. In my past life, I only found out Jason was cheating when he and his mistress got into a car accident during a road trip. 3. The police said the mistress was still carrying a child, and a DNA test confirmed it was Jason's, before I could even process the heartbreak. My furious in-laws handed me a glass of water laced with paraquat and sent me straight to hell. After that, I not only endured physical agony but also forced myself to file a police report and hire a lawyer, fighting for the justice I deserved. My parents passed away early, and I lost touch with all my relatives. I even had to make arrangements for my own funeral, right up until my last breath. My in-laws were crying and begging for my forgiveness to get a lighter sentence, while simultaneously suing me to seize all the compensation from the accident. Fortunately, fate gave me a second chance to start over. This time, I'm going to watch their entire family meet their end with my own eyes. Jason urged me, honey, go take a shower, I'll be waiting for you. I walked into the bathroom with a smile. After finishing my shower, I made an excuse to brush him off, saying, it's that time of the month. He looked disappointed. I shot him a glance. What's the rush? Have you forgotten what the doctor said? Mom's body isn't suited for pregnancy at all. Once complications arise, she won't need convincing, she'll give up on her own. How could any child be more important than her own well-being? Jason's eyes lit up. I looked it up on Baidu too. The chances of miscarriage are really high for someone in Mom's condition. He then cheerfully started playing with his phone, and judging by his smug expression, it was clear he was chatting with his mistress. After that day, Jason stopped objecting to his parents having another child. Instead, He became unusually attentive to his mother-in-law's blood sugar and blood pressure levels, which greatly comforted both parents. The atmosphere at home returned to its previous state of peace. The moment I opened that delivery box containing the Chow Tai Fook gold bracelet, I knew this home would soon turn into a living hell, just like in my past life. Jason's face darkened the instant he saw the package I had opened. He said, "Honey, I got you this anniversary gift. I was going to surprise you with it. Could you pretend you didn't see it? I'll return this and get you a new present." I smiled sweetly and said, "Sure, I'm looking forward to it." That night, before he went to take a shower, he left his phone charging on the nightstand. I opened WeChat and saw his chat history with the other woman. "I bought you the gold bracelet you liked. Don't forget what you promised me. Don't worry, I've got everything ready." In the photo, a bed was covered with a leather bodysuit, a thong, handcuffs, and a whip. Jason replied with a drooling emoji. "Just wait, tomorrow you won't be able to get out of bed." The rest was just their flirty banter. I scrolled up, fighting off disgust, and saw them discussing how to transfer assets, use our marital status to saddle me with debt, and swindle the house my parents left me. None of this surprised me in the slightest. It just reinforced my belief that all scumbags are cut from the same cloth. As expected, I had no qualms about watching him walk to his doom. The one who should feel guilty isn't me. The next day, I bid farewell with a smile to Jason, who said he was going on a week-long business trip out of town. Jason left in the morning, and the police called around noon. "Yes, this is Clara. Jason is my husband." When Jason's name was mentioned, my in-laws looked over curiously, and I helpfully put the call on speakerphone. The road was slippery from the rain. A dump truck overturned while making a left turn, crushing the car your husband was driving. By the time they pulled him out, he was already in shock. The medical staff did everything they could at the hospital, but they couldn't save him. My mother-in-law, who already had high blood pressure, heard this, rolled her eyes back, and collapsed straight backward. The father-in-law rushed to catch her, but ended up being pulled down and crashing heavily to the ground, with a sharp crack. I clearly heard the sound of a bone breaking. What a delightful sound that was, for both the in-laws were taken away by an ambulance. My mother-in-law was so shocked that her blood pressure shot up to 180, and the doctor insisted she be hospitalized. As soon as she woke up, she anxiously asked me, "Is it true? Is Jason really gone?" She broke down instantly, wailing from her hospital bed, "My son," but after just a few sobs, she clutched her head and cried out for the doctor. "My head is killing me. It feels like it's about to explode." The doctor explained this was a hypertensive emergency, and while not untreatable, most medications were off limits due to her pregnancy. Even if symptoms eased now, the condition was likely to recur as the pregnancy advanced, with serious complications endangering both mother and child. Between the lines, the doctor was subtly suggesting termination of the pregnancy, perhaps overwhelmed by physical distress. The mother-in-law's face showed a flicker of hesitation. How could this be acceptable? I pretended to be utterly heartbroken and sobbed to my mother-in-law, "Mom, I know you're devastated by Jason's death, but you must take care of yourself. You're carrying a child." I reminded her, "If anything happens to you, our family line will end." Sure enough, my mother-in-law became resolute again, glared at the doctor, and threatened, "If anything happens to my child, I'll jump off the roof of this hospital." The doctor looked utterly helpless, his gaze toward me filled with profound complexity. I silently apologized to the doctor in my heart, deciding to make a proper apology after everything settles down. As for my father-in-law, he cushioned my mother-in-law's fall and took the full impact of her 130-pound body weight. He ended up with a broken arm and leg, but these injuries are actually manageable and treatable. However, during the examination, a CT scan revealed a growth in his lung. The doctor said it's highly likely to be malignant and already at an advanced stage. My father-in-law had a persistent cough, but since he'd been a heavy smoker for decades, no one suspected it was anything serious. In my previous life, he was still alive and well right up until the day I died. Now that we've caught it early, who's to say that's actually a good thing? After further tests, he was diagnosed with advanced lung cancer. I almost laughed in the doctor's face, but I pinched myself hard and forced a sorrowful expression as I begged the doctor, "Doctor, please save my father. Isn't surgery an option? Get the best specialist for my dad. Switch all his medication to imported brands." Gritting my teeth, I declared with unwavering resolve, "My husband passed in a car accident. The insurance will pay out a substantial sum, and I won't take a single penny. Every cent will go toward my father's treatment." My father-in-law looked at me with deep satisfaction. "Having a daughter-in-law like you is the greatest blessing our family could ever ask for." Preoccupied with consulting the doctor about treatment options, I failed to notice that behind me, my mother-in-law's expression had darkened. her gaze now filled with complex emotions. After the doctor left, I wiped the non-existent tears from the corner of my eye. Dad, Mom, I need to go, make arrangements for Jason's funeral. I meant every word I said to the doctor. I don't want the compensation money. Consider it my way of fulfilling Jason's filial duties. The in-laws exchanged glances, their eyes showing no grief over their own son's death, only wariness toward each other. I walked out of the hospital room and waited for 3 seconds. Behind me, the sound of a heated argument erupted, a smile touched my lips, and my steps felt lighter. The accident that tipped Jason's life happened in the neighboring city. Jason's body had been taken to the morgue at the funeral home. The police asked if I wanted to see him one last time. I refused, saying, just proceed with the cremation. The police had already identified the woman who died in the car crash with Jason, so they weren't surprised by my reaction, just went through the motions professionally. I signed the papers, collected Jason's belongings, then watched as his body was sent into the cremation chamber. In the end, all that remained was a handful of ashes. I bought the cheapest urn for Jason's ashes. As I was leaving, I saw the police speaking with a couple. The man's eyes were bloodshot, and the woman was quietly sobbing. It dawned on me that they must be the mistress's parents. They seemed to recognize who I was, their expressions turning awkward the moment they saw me. My heart skipped a beat. Clearly, unlike their daughter, they still had some sense of shame. 5. I gave them a calm, composed nod. They seemed taken aback by my demeanor. After exchanging a few hushed words, they walked over to me. The man said awkwardly, "We've learned about what happened between my daughter and your partner. Although she's already faced consequences, a wrong is still a wrong. I failed to raise my daughter properly as her father. I apologize to you on her behalf." He was about to bow to me, but I reached out and stopped him. I said, "It was Jason who was going to cheat. Even if it wasn't your daughter, it would have been someone else." But I also needed to make it crystal clear to them exactly what kind of person their daughter is. I found the phone among the belongings, pulled up the WeChat chat history, and handed it to them. After reading it, their faces turned absolutely grim, but they still begged me not to reveal that their daughter was the other woman. As for the child the mistress was carrying, none of us brought it up. It was pointless by then. On the way back from the funeral home, I finally received the documents from the private investigator. In the photo, there was a woman in her 40s next to my father-in-law. They didn't seem particularly close, but there was also a 5 or 6-year-old boy in the picture. The 3 of them were seen together at restaurants, amusement parks, and shopping malls. If not for the father-in-law's advanced age, they could easily be mistaken for a close-knit family of 3. I took a closer look at the little boy and my father-in-law's features, and honestly, there was a noticeable resemblance between them. I couldn't help but laugh. It felt like the universe was finally on my side. By the time I returned, my in-laws were still in the hospital. I went to see my father-in-law first. He had a splint on his arm and a cast on his leg, looking quite miserable. After showing some concern for him, I wheeled him to the maternity ward to meet up with my mother-in-law. My father-in-law had a long face, and my mother-in-law snorted coldly. Clearly, neither of them was too pleased. I pretended not to notice and brought up Jason's funeral arrangements, saying, "I've temporarily kept the ashes at home. How should we handle the funeral, after all? He's their biological son they've raised for 30 years. Despite their current disagreement, they set aside their differences to discuss matters together. After much discussion, they decided to only notify a few close relatives, keep the ceremony simple, but insisted on buying a high-quality burial plot. I didn't offer my opinion, but said hesitantly, "Mom, Dad, since we're family, I'll be frank with you, even an average burial plot costs over 100,000 yuan, let alone a nicer one. Neither Jason nor I earn much. After paying the mortgage, car loan, and living expenses each month, there's barely anything left. Right now, we only have a little over 60,000 in our bank account." They both looked at me skeptically, clearly not buying it. I pulled up our banking app and double-checked the balance, only 61,340 yuan. Our expressions soured. Truth is, there's more. Jason invested another 300,000 in funds that we can cash out anytime, but his parents have no idea about that money. I brought up the accident compensation again. The insurance company has already started processing the claim. It could take as little as a month, or up to 3 months at most, for the payout to come through. The total amount is over 600,000. I tried to squeeze out a few tears, but they wouldn't come. So I just put on a mournful expression and said, "Jason and I were married, and of course I want to give him a proper send-off, but the living have to come first. Once Mom gives birth, there will be plenty of expenses, and Dad's medical bills are piling up too. I think it's better to use the money where it's really needed." Hearing this, my in-laws exchanged a glance, each thinking they were the more important one. In the end, The two of them made the final decision and chose the cheapest garden burial for Jason, costing $18,000. I immediately offered to cover the cost and spoke up for him, saying, Jason was always so filial, I'm sure if he were still here, he would understand his parents' decision. After the discussion, I escorted my father-in-law back to his room and accidentally left my bag on my mother-in-law's hospital bed on my way out. By the time I left my father-in-law's room, my phone already had over a dozen missed calls, all from my mother-in-law. I leisurely bought myself a coffee, scrolled through my phone for a bit, and then strolled back to my mother-in-law's hospital room. Mom, my phone was on silent. Sorry about that. Why did you call me so many times? Is something urgent? My mother-in-law was holding a stack of photos, her voice trembling as she asked, Is all of this true? What do you mean, real or not? I took it curiously, but my expression changed the moment I saw the photo. My mother-in-law pressed sharply, Hurry up and tell me, what's going on? Under her persistent questioning, I reluctantly explained, Jason and I had heard some rumors earlier. We were afraid of wrongly accusing Dad, so we decided to look into it first to find out the truth, but then we never got any updates, and with Jason's accident, I completely forgot about the whole thing. 6. I just ran into the delivery guy on my way out today, so I tossed it in my bag. My mother-in-law flew into a rage and was about to confront my father-in-law. That bastard George, how dare he cheat on me behind my back and even knock up some woman. I'm going to kill him. I quickly stopped her. Mom, hold on, I really don't think Dad is that kind of person. He's always been so good to you. Just look at how he's been waiting on you hand and foot since you got pregnant with my little brother. Bringing you tea, massaging your feet, without a single complaint. Besides, Dad was standing quite far from that woman, and they didn't seem close at all. Plus, the child doesn't look like him at all. There must be something more to this story. My mother-in-law immediately blew up. That's definitely his child. Everyone in their family, the Jasons, has those same single eyelids and eyebrows. The kid looks exactly like George. The more she talked, the angrier she got. Her blood pressure shot up, and she nearly fainted from dizziness. I quickly reached out to steady her. Mom, you have to take care of yourself. You're carrying a baby. After all, my mother-in-law froze. After a moment, she placed a hand on her belly and said, This pregnancy has taken everything out of me. I can't eat, I can't sleep, my blood pressure won't go down, and now my blood sugar's spiking. I'm even short of breath just talking. The doctor says it's too risky to carry to term and advised me to terminate. But George won't hear of it. Now I see the truth. He's waiting for me to die along with this baby so he can leave everything to that woman and her bastard child. Mother-in-law forced a smile, but it looked more pain than genuine. She made me promise not to tell a soul about what happened that day, and I agreed. Mom, as women, we have to stick together. I'm on your side. She carried on as if nothing had happened, though I'd occasionally catch her shooting daggers at my father-in-law. The day of Jason's funeral arrived all too soon. Friends and relatives sighed with heavy hearts, unaware of the mother-in-law's second pregnancy. They whispered among themselves, Jason didn't leave behind any children. How will the old couple carry on? But George could still have another child now, couldn't he? Though his wife is probably too old to conceive, right? Someone in the know murmured quietly, Let me tell you, you're behind on the news. George has more than just Jason as his offspring. How did you find out? Tell me more. I just heard it through the grapevine, so take it with a grain of salt. The crowd outside was buzzing with heated discussions, completely unaware that on the other side of the greenbelt, the mother-in-law had overheard every single word. As the funeral attendees dispersed and we were about to leave, the father-in-law suddenly realized he'd left his phone at the gravesite and asked us to wait for him. I glanced at his leg and said, Dad, where did you drop it? I'll go get it for you. My father-in-law declined. It's in the men's restroom. It wouldn't be appropriate for you to go in. With that, he drove off on his electric wheelchair. After he left, my mother-in-law took me along to follow him, and we saw the woman from the photo being led by him to Jason's grave. From a distance, their voices were too faint to make out, but the father-in-law's affectionate demeanor toward the woman and child was unmistakably clear. I glanced at my mother-in-law. Her face showed no expression, almost serene, yet her eyes were bloodshot with rage, and a vein throbbed visibly at her temple. Seeing she wasn't as composed as she appeared put my mind at ease. After Jason's funeral, my in-laws' condition stabilized, and they were discharged from the hospital to recuperate at home for the time being. My father-in-law is on imported targeted therapy drugs, which aren't covered by insurance, costing over $30,000 a month. When relatives found out, they quietly advised my mother-in-law, George's illness is hard to treat, don't end up losing both him and all your money. Wiping her tears, my mother-in-law said, He's my husband, if it gives him one more day to live, I'd pay $30,000. No. Even 300,000, without hesitation. When the old man heard this, he took his wife's hand and sighed. Only at a time like this do I realize who truly cares for me most. The elderly couple's relationship became more harmonious than ever before. Despite her advanced pregnancy, the wife would brew soup for her husband every day, bring it to his room, and feed him spoonful by spoonful. But the old man's condition showed no sign of improvement. His coughing grew worse and persisted throughout the night. One night just before bed, my father-in-law suddenly coughed up blood. He was startled and asked, "Am I going to die? Quick, call a car and take me to..." But before he could finish his sentence, his voice trailed off. Through the crack in the door, I saw my mother-in-law shove a rag into my father-in-law's mouth. I pretended nothing had happened and tiptoed back to my room. Lying in bed, I thought about my past life. That night, I woke up gasping for air and struggled to get help from my in-laws, but their kindly faces suddenly turned cold. "If it weren't for you, my son would have been born by now. 7. You're the reason our family line ends with us. Now you're going to die too." They took my phone, tied me up, and locked me in the room. I tried everything I could, bashing my head against the window until the glass shattered. The noise woke up others in the neighborhood, and that's how I finally got free. The thought of my father-in-law suffering the same agony as me now fills me with a dark sense of satisfaction. Early the next morning, I was woken by my mother-in-law's weeping. "How could you be so heartless, dear? How are we supposed to go on without you?" I nodded. The cries also drew the neighbors over, and the elderly woman sobbed until she passed out. The police and ambulance arrived almost at the same time. After examining her, the doctor pulled the officer aside and whispered a few words before checking on the elderly woman. Shortly after, she regained consciousness and hugged me, crying. My father-in-law's body was taken away. The autopsy revealed he was poisoned with paraquat. The police came to ask me about the situation, questioning whether my in-laws had been acting unusual lately. I shook my head. That night when I went out to get water, I could faintly hear them talking. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but a while back, my father-in-law wasn't doing well health-wise. He was in a lot of discomfort, sometimes in so much pain he couldn't sleep through the night. My mother-in-law, pregnant and all, still had to take care of him. He mentioned a few times that he felt he was burdening her. This account was corroborated by relatives and neighbors. After investigating, the police concluded that the father-in-law, believing his illness was incurable and not wanting to drain the family's finances, ended his own life in a moment of despair exacerbated by his suffering. Within just 1 month, having lost both her son and then her husband, the mother-in-law was so devastated she could no longer get out of bed. At her husband's funeral, she wept until she fainted multiple times. Relatives tried repeatedly to persuade her, but she refused to listen and insisted on seeing through all the funeral arrangements. After the funeral ended and everyone had left, the pain and reluctance on the mother-in-law's face vanished, leaving only a dazed emptiness. She sat blankly before her father-in-law's grave for a long time, not rising to leave until her body could no longer bear it. But before she could even exit the cemetery, she ran into that woman again. The woman's eyes were red, and she carried a bouquet of chrysanthemums, clearly there to pay her respects to the father-in-law. The mother-in-law's face turned ashen. Just as she was about to speak, she heard the woman choke back a sob and say, "I'm here to see Dad off one last time." The woman explained that back when her father-in-law was sent to the countryside, he had fallen for a village girl. After spending some time together, the two held a wedding banquet and became husband and wife. The following year, she was born. Later, due to policy changes, my father-in-law returned to the city. When he left, he promised to come back for his wife and daughter once he got settled, but he never contacted them again. Back in those days, this kind of thing happened all the time. The woman's mother knew she had been abandoned, but unlike others who chased after their husbands for answers, she said, "Am I supposed to stop living just because he's gone? I don't want to come on too strong." With her parents' support, she raised her daughter alone until she started elementary school. Then remarried through a family-arranged introduction. The woman explained she moved here due to a job transfer and reached out to her father-in-law out of curiosity about him, but she didn't want to disrupt his current family, so they only met occasionally, sometimes with her son in tow. To prove her point, the woman showed her mother-in-law her father-in-law and her own mother's marriage certificate from back in the day, along with a family photo of them holding a child, and a diary left by the father-in-law. The handwriting in it was unmistakably his. The woman was telling the truth, but the mother-in-law refused to accept it, muttering under her breath, "It can't be, it has to be fake, it's definitely a scam." Without arguing, the woman simply kowtowed 3 times before her father-in-law's grave, placed the flowers, and left alone. I suppressed a smile and said to her, "Mom, let's go home." 8. My mother-in-law nodded blankly, but then clutched her stomach and cried out in pain. The baby couldn't be saved. The doctor said her physical condition wasn't suitable for pregnancy to begin with, and coupled with the severe emotional blows she'd suffered, she ended up miscarrying. Knowing our family circumstances, the doctor hinted that this was actually for the best. When she came to, she didn't cry or make a scene. In fact, she remained remarkably calm. After returning home from the hospital, my mother-in-law kept having nightmares, often waking up calling out for my father-in-law and Jason. During the day, she had no energy and seemed constantly dazed and distracted. Sometimes when watering the plants, she wouldn't realize the watering can was empty until water had already spilled all over the floor. She would walk out of her room and suddenly forget what she meant to do, just standing there blankly in the living room. Relatives came to see her and pulled me aside to say, "Keep a close eye on your mom. It's been really tough for her. I completely understand, but I have my own job to handle, with daily work and even business trips." I thanked them again and again. On the day of my business trip, I made breakfast for my mother-in-law before leaving. Before heading out, I noticed the insulin in the fridge and asked her, "Mom, have you taken your shot yet?" She thought for a moment and said, "I don't think so." Then she took out the needle and gave herself the injection. After breakfast, I went back to my room and pulled out my suitcase. I told her, "Mom, I'll be away on a business trip for 3 days. Make sure to eat properly while I'm gone. No skipping meals. If anything comes up, just give me a call." My mother-in-law nodded and watched me leave. As the door closed, I heard her muttering to herself, "Did I take my insulin today?" I smiled silently and then left. In the evening, I called my mother-in-law, but no one answered. I then called the neighbor across the hall and said worriedly, "Auntie Lou, my mom isn't answering my calls. I'm worried something might be wrong. Could you please check on her at my place? The passcode for my front door is 202122. Aunt Lou agreed right away and even praised me. "As a daughter-in-law, you're absolutely wonderful, so thoughtful and dutiful." A few seconds later, Aunt Lou said over the phone, "I'm coming in." I listened carefully, straining to hear the sounds from my phone. Snap, 9. That's the sound of Aunt Lou turning on the light. Then came Aunt Lou's scream. She frantically asked me over the phone, "Clara, your mother-in-law is on the floor. Could she be dead?" Then came the sound of her shouting for help. The voice on the other end of the line was all jumbled and chaotic. When the phone was picked up again, it was Aunt Lou's husband's voice. "Clara, your mother-in-law has passed away. We don't know what happened either, but we've called the police. You need to come back right away." After hanging up, I explained the situation to my boss and rushed back overnight. It was the same officer from when my father-in-law left. His gaze held a frank scrutiny, and I could tell he suspected me. The officer grilled me repeatedly about my mother-in-law's condition before I left the house today. They checked my high-speed rail ticket purchase history, ride-hailing records, and even called my boss to confirm I was indeed on a business trip today. Finally, the officer said, "You can't stay at home for now. We need to conduct further investigations." I nodded in understanding. "I'll cooperate." The cause of my mother-in-law's death came out 3 days later. She died from hypoglycemia. She had diabetes, and it's likely she'd been disoriented lately and overdosed on insulin. Everyone was deeply saddened by the news, but they came to accept the conclusion fairly quickly. With her son gone, her husband dead, and the baby in her womb not even guaranteed to survive, anyone would lose their mind. Even if she manages to give birth to this second child, what kind of future would she have left to look forward to? If she really goes through with it, her hardest days are still ahead. Have you even considered her age? How long could she possibly raise the child? She might even end up being a burden to Clara. You've got a point there. I arranged the third funeral for my family, staring at the 3 tombstones side by side. I broke down sobbing. Everyone thought I was mourning my lost family, but only I knew it was the release of long-awaited vengeance. After that, I quit my job, sold my in-laws' house in the new home Jason and I never moved into, then left for another city with the money, on the high-speed train. The scenery outside the window rushes past as the train speeds along. I've finally left all my past behind and started a new life. Story 2. My sister is a snake demon, cultivating for 1,000 years just to transform into a dragon and ascend. At the moment of ascension, a mortal pointed at her and said, "It's a snake." She fell from midair, severely weakened, and was taken to the palace by an emperor who was out hunting. Through their daily interactions, my sister developed feelings. But the emperor took advantage of her guard being down and impaled her with a spear dipped in talisman water. He dug out his sister's snake pearl and shared it with the imperial concubine. Folklore claims the emperor and his concubine share profound love, unswayed by demons. Having personally slain the monsters to usher in this peaceful era, no one knows that my sister was the golden python revered as an auspicious sign, while I am the ghost snake that brings calamity. Now, I've been welcomed into the palace as a divine maiden. 1. On the day my sister died, 100 birds wailed in mourning, and heaven and earth wept together. The ignorant mortals called it an auspicious sign, the sound of victory, like sweet rain after a long drought. Only when the torrential rain poured for 3 days straight, drowning and destroying village after village, did they realize it wasn't sweet rain but calamity. Refugees came in wave after wave. While courtiers submitted stack upon stack of memorials, the emperor's endless worries turned his hair white. At that very moment, I appeared. The incessant rain ceased without warning, as I stood on the high platform with a hand seal, becoming their savior in desperate times. Thousands knelt in worship, revering me as the divine maiden. I got my wish and was summoned to the palace. The emperor sat on the high platform, his oppressive aura carrying traces of my sister's snake elixir. He asked me what I desired. I prostrated on the ground. I only seek a place to stay. Raise your head. I slowly raised my head, catching a fleeting look of admiration in Levi's eyes. Unlike my sister's delicate elegance, I radiate a more vibrant and captivating beauty. The more vividly patterned the snake, the deadlier its venom tends to be. Levi's Adam's apple bobbed as he began to speak, only to be interrupted by the imperial consort beside him. In my humble opinion, why not have her move to the state preceptor's residence? The divine maiden and the state preceptor would likely find much to discuss. The noble consort's complexion remained composed, yet her knuckles turned a frightening bluish-white from excessive force. The state preceptor was both her spy and her lover. The noble consort was intensely jealous, unable to tolerate even the slightest speck in her eye. As Levi's gaze gradually shifted from her to her elder sister, she grew anxious. So she had the royal sorcerer tell Levi that her sister was a golden python about to ascend, and that extracting its core and drinking its blood would greatly benefit mortal cultivation. Obsessed with cultivation, Levi sought to rival deities with his mortal body, and his heart was swayed. Thus, step by step, he deceived her sister, ultimately piercing her through with a spear dipped in talisman water. Sisters as one. I could clearly feel her blood gushing uncontrollably from her body. The spear pierced chest burning with searing pain. A millennial serpent demon, just one step away from transforming into a dragon. Waves of excruciating pain stung her heart. Her sister wept, dying in disbelief that the emperor she deeply loved would slaughter her without hesitation, feasting on her flesh and blood. The mortal world is heartless, I had warned her long ago. After a moment of silence, Levi agreed to the imperial concubine's proposal. Shall the divine maiden reside in the state preceptor's residence? Thank you, your majesty. This humble woman has heard that your majesty recently obtained a serpent core. A 1,000-year serpent core is extremely rare in this world. If the core is refined for your majesty's use, achieving immortality may be effortless, and manipulating the clouds and rain would be as easy as turning one's hand. Levi's obsession with attaining immortality was known throughout the land. The fact that I stopped the heavy rain with a mere hand seal added credibility to my words. Instantly, Levi's eyes lit up. The serpent pearl placed beside him had indeed cured many of his chronic ailments. The serpent pearl nourished him, restoring his vitality and making him appear years younger, yet this fell far short of his expectations. Greed knows no bounds, and Levi desired far more than this, and so the task of refining the serpent pearl was entrusted to me, with a deadline of 49 days. The golden glowing snake pearl rests in my palm, warmth spreading from my hand to my heart. My sister comforts me, saying, Athena, big sister is fine, too. Wherever the golden python goes, blessings follow, a divine gift from heaven. In 1,000 years, only my sister has been born as one, and I am a ghost snake, even rarer than the golden python. On the day I was born, all life withered. Heaven and earth lost their radiance, plagues ravaged the land, and the people suffered endlessly. The ghost snake is an ominous creature. Wherever it goes, calamity follows. Thus, my arrival is met with scorn. My parents loathe me, my siblings despise me. I was ostracized and bullied. Back then, I hadn't yet taken human form, just a tiny creature, unable to hunt alone. My parents refused to feed me, and even the scraps I managed to scavenge were stolen by others of my kind, often going hungry. I looked much thinner than other snakes my age, lying half dead in the snow. Just when I thought I wouldn't survive the harsh winter, my sister saved me. She stood in front of me, shielding me from all the storms. She said, Athena, you can't choose your origins, but you can choose your future. So I practiced cultivation by her side, and through the long years, all we had was each other. I suppressed the bloodthirsty nature of the ghost snake and stayed by her side year after year. When she smiled, dimples would appear on her cheeks, making her look adorable. Her long eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings, captivating the heart. Despite having an absurdly low alcohol tolerance, she loved imitating humans by warming a pot of unfiltered wine during New Year's Eve. Even when drunk, she never forgot to recite her grand philosophies. She said the strong should protect the weak, that she would ascend as a dragon and shelter this land. I hated her grand principles. and hated even more that I had no place in them. She asked me with a smile what kind of person I wanted to become in the future. Coiled around her neck, I answered without hesitation, a man. I will surely transform into a man and protect her just as she protected me. The water reflected that peerlessly beautiful face. I reached out to disturb the surface. I should have been a man. We should have stayed together forever. 3. I moved into the state preceptor's residence. Dwelling in the most remote and desolate courtyard far from him, however, snakes have much keener hearing than humans. In the dead of night, I still detected unusual movements in the imperial preceptor's courtyard. The imperial preceptor wore only a thin robe as the noble consort threw herself into his arms, her delicate fingers tracing circles on his chest. Brother Dashiell, I've missed you so much these past few days. The imperial preceptor tenderly brushed aside the stray hairs at her temples. Isabella, let me take you away. We'll become immortal lovers, roaming freely between heaven and earth, no longer confined by the gilded cages of the imperial harem. Wouldn't that be wonderful? The imperial consort and the state preceptor were childhood sweethearts with deep affection, but after a near-drowning incident, her temperament changed drastically, defying her family's objections. She insisted on entering the imperial palace. The consort's maternal family lacked strong foundations, causing her repeated setbacks. She narrowly escaped death several times in palace intrigues, thus she wrote a blood-letter to the state preceptor still outside the palace. Knowing well his capabilities, she begged him to enter the imperial court. The state preceptor, who aspired to wander free as clouds and cranes among mountains and rivers, entered the gilded cage called the Imperial Palace for the sake of his beloved's plea. Joining forces, the Imperial consort stepped over one corpse after another to climb to her current position. Unlike the Grand Preceptor, what she craved most was power. How could she abandon such immense wealth to elope with the Grand Preceptor? She aspired to be the most revered woman in the world, not the wife of some country bumpkin. A tear slipped from the corner of her eye as she wore an expression of reluctance and grievance. Brother Dashiell, you know I can't. My mother and father, as well as my maternal siblings, all still depend on me. This is her usual excuse. The imperial advisor sighed and tightened his embrace around her, lying on the rooftop watching their affection. I couldn't help but sigh. Levi's head is truly green with jealousy. Before leaving, the imperial consort mentioned me to the imperial advisor. After the incident with elder sister, she became even more vigilant, determined to eliminate any potential threats to her ascension to Empress. To show his respect for the divine maiden, Levi personally escorted me to the state preceptor's residence, which made her feel threatened once again. If it weren't for the banquet 3 days later where I must make an appearance, I probably wouldn't survive tonight. As soon as the imperial consort spoke, the state preceptor understood her intentions. He said, "Don't worry, if she harbors ulterior motives, the state preceptor's residence won't mind having one more corpse." After the imperial consort left, the state preceptor's face turned as dark as water. The previous warmth in his eyes completely vanished as he spoke coldly. "How long do you intend to keep eavesdropping?" Instantly, a large hole was torn through the eaves beside me. Had I not dodged in time, my arm would likely be gone. I leaped down, brushing off the dust from my clothes. "It's been years since we last met, yet your skills have improved considerably." I tilted my head slightly, "But compared to me, you're still far behind," he sneered. "No matter how powerful, you're still bound by the laws of heaven, no matter where they are. Demons are never welcome," as if bloodlust and cruelty were innate traits carved into a demon's bones, and demons are far stronger than humans. With just a wave of their hand, they could snap their necks. Thus the heavenly Tao manifested, decreeing that demons must not excessively interfere in mortal affairs. I cannot personally avenge my sister's death. This is precisely why Dashiell, though fully aware he's no match for me, remains so brazenly unafraid. "Weren't you always secluded in the deep mountains and ancient forests? What brings you suddenly to the imperial palace? Could it be you seek vengeance for your sister? Why did you kill my sister? She once saved your life." War raged in the north, displacing countless civilians who fled south in droves, Dashiell among them, gaunt and frail. The small boy was jostled and shoved in the surging crowd. When his sister found him, he was covered in blood, barely clinging to life. Dashiell's gaze towards me was piercingly cold. "Had you not suddenly appeared back then, the north wouldn't have plunged into war. I've never owed you sisters anything." I could barely suppress the hatred and resentment in my heart. "That has nothing to do with her. If you want to kill someone, come kill me." Dashiell turned his face away. "You sisters are one and the same. What difference does it make, as long as Isabella needs Isabella?" I scoffed coldly. "The core inside has long been replaced. The current Isabella is no longer your childhood sweetheart, you fool. Can't even recognize the person you love." Dashiell's eyes widened, his breath catching. After Isabella fell into the water, her temperament changed drastically. He had his suspicions and tested her, but Isabella brushed it off by claiming amnesia. Dashiell shook his head vigorously, retorting, "Impossible. Sometimes what people excel at most is deceiving themselves, and what I must do is force them to break free from their own lies. Just wait and see. Let's find out if the course still loves you or not, for where the ghost serpent goes, calamity follows." The Hall of Mental Cultivation. Peaceful for too long, suddenly caught fire, flames raged, thick smoke blotted the sky, and Levi remained trapped inside. The maids and eunuchs outside screamed in panic, shouting help, and fire. In chaos, they rushed to fetch water, terrified that if anything happened to the emperor inside, they'd be held accountable. Bucket after bucket was thrown, yet the flames only grew fiercer. The normally orderly palace was now in complete disarray. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. I timed my descent perfectly, and when they saw me, it was as if they all collectively exhaled in relief. The Divine Maiden, it's the Divine Maiden, thank goodness, His Majesty will be saved. As the flames continued to spread, I rushed in under the hopeful gazes of the crowd. The burning beam collapsed, pinning Levi's leg firmly beneath it, leaving him unable to move. Sweat poured down his soot-stained face as hope flickered in his eyes. Divine Maiden, I used magic to move the beam aside. And as I helped Levi escape, another beam fell, heading straight for him. I swiftly turned and shielded him beneath me. Your Majesty, be careful, I didn't use magic, pretending to be careless as I let the flames burn a patch of skin on my back. Later, as he personally applied medicine for me, his face full of distress, he said, "This is all my fault, Your Majesty." This subject acted out of urgent devotion to protect my lord. My garments slipped halfway, exposing large swathes of snow-white skin as Levi's fingertips applied ointment along my spine. A shiver ran through me, drawing a soft moan, prompting his immediate concern, was that too painful? Fine beads of sweat formed on my forehead as I paled, appearing fragile and pitiful, mustering a strained smile toward him. "It doesn't hurt, Your Majesty." His hand applying ointment for me paused, his earlobes reddening as if about to drip blood. "I'll be gentler." Everyone else had been dismissed, leaving only the sound of our heartbeats and breathing in the quiet room. The rise and fall of his chest quickened, his hand applying medicine trembling slightly. The next day, the jealous noble consort came knocking. 5. I knelt below while she unceremoniously took the seat of honor. She bent down and tightly gripped my face, her sharp nails digging into my flesh, her tone sinister. Divine Maiden, truly laughable. That 1,000-year snake demon on the verge of godhood also fell to my hands, ending up dismembered into pieces. "What makes you think you're any different?" I stared unblinkingly at her, as if seeing her already dead future. "If I discover you've entertained improper thoughts, I'll have your skin flayed off." She flung my hand away, leaving a long bloody scratch across my face. I prostrated myself on the ground, demonstrating absolute loyalty. "Your Highness overestimates me. This humble servant knows his lowly status. How could I dare covet the Emperor? The Emperor's left leg is severely injured, and even the imperial physicians are at a loss. I once obtained a miraculous pill that can cure all diseases and heal all wounds." The imperial consort became interested. She raised an eyebrow and asked me, "Where is the medicine?" But before the imperial consort could present the pill to win the Emperor's favor, an unexpected incident occurred. The Grand Astrologer unfortunately missed his step and broke his leg. The imperial physicians shook their heads at the broken leg. Finding no other solution, rumors spread through the palace that the Grand Preceptor would remain a cripple for life. Some sighed in pity, while others took malicious delight. For the noble consort, the choice wasn't difficult, between the lover who helped her climb to high status and the world's most exalted emperor. Yet the Grand Preceptor still wanted to make one final struggle. "Isabella, why aren't you wearing the bracelet I gave you?" The imperial concubine guiltily hid her hands behind her back. "Perhaps I left it in the palace in my haste." "Brother Dashiell, did you come looking for me for something?" The royal astrologer's eyes flickered slightly, yet he continued smiling and reminiscing with her as usual. "When you were little, you always coveted your elder sister's bracelet, so I found some jade and personally carved a pair for you. The craftsmanship was rough, yet you were overjoyed and wore it constantly, even unwilling to take it off when sleeping." His expression softened with nostalgia as he recalled the past. The imperial consort stiffly forced a smile and awkwardly laughed. "Brother Dashiell, that was so long ago." The state preceptor shook his head. "To me, it feels like just yesterday." He went on and on with a long rambling speech, until the imperial consort grew utterly weary of listening. I'd already forgotten about it. The unspoken words stuck in his throat, neither coming up nor going down. The state preceptor lowered his eyelashes and said, "Very well." The imperial consort didn't even hesitate before giving that pill to the emperor. The state preceptor's face was tense, his lips pressed into a thin line. Leaning against the doorframe, I gazed at him with pity. Dashiell, can't you see it even now? His hands clenched into tight fists. Seeing no reaction from him, I added another heavy blow. What if I told you your Isabella isn't dead yet? His eyes lit up. I continued. 2 souls in one body. The false one has temporarily taken over the real one's form. As long as we drive her away, the real one will naturally awaken. I leaned close to his ear and whispered temptingly, and I can help you. Join me, kill the false imperial consort and the emperor, and I'll bring your Isabella back to you. 6. A sudden fire broke out in the emperor's bedchamber, a matter of grave importance concerning the sovereign's safety. From high-ranking officials to lowly maids and eunuchs, everyone clutched their heads in fear. The palace was shrouded in gloom, and every step felt like treading on the edge of a blade. The emperor ordered a thorough investigation, but even after turning the palace upside down, nothing was found. I told Levi that the snake pearl auspicious sign could protect its master, and the closer one was to the snake pearl, the fewer disasters would occur. Since the snake pearl needed to be handed over to me for refinement, I successfully stayed in the palace, remaining by Levi's side. He looked at the memorials with a headache, while I stood by grinding ink for him. Suddenly, I started coughing violently, blood gushing out from my mouth. This was the heavenly Tao's warning as I began meddling in mortal affairs, just a superficial injury. After all, I hadn't actually done anything yet. Levi immediately stood up to support me, his expression panicked. What's happening? Staggering slightly, I barely managed to steady myself by gripping Levi's wrist, just as my maidservant spoke up at the right moment. Your Majesty, the Divine Maiden has been like this ever since coming out of the fire. The imperial physician said her internal organs were injured and she needs time to recuperate. Levi's eyes filled with more pity as he looked at me. Why didn't you tell me? I need to constantly remind him of the injuries I suffered for him, the hardships I endured, how I rushed into the fire without hesitation to save him. He owes me his life. Oh no, make that 2 lives. I lowered my head, my docile hair cascading down to reveal a pale, fragile neck. Your servant is willing to die for your Majesty. Such minor injuries are nothing. His Adam's apple bobbed as his grip on my wrist tightened. Athena, scorching breath brushed against my ear, and from the corner of my eye, I saw the rising desire in his gaze. Mortals are wretched creatures. What they can see but cannot taste is always the most coveted. I withdrew my hand. Your Majesty, there must be propriety between ruler and subject. Disappointment flashed in his eyes as he curled his fingers, murmuring softly, just ruler and subject. 7. The imperial consort presented the divine medicine to the emperor, who was overjoyed and bestowed lavish rewards upon Wanhua Palace. But before the imperial consort could rejoice, Levi vomited blood incessantly and fainted on the spot. The imperial physicians trembled like quails, kneeling in unison, only to find Levi had stopped breathing, his body turning cold and stiff, clear signs of death. When the imperial guards arrived, the noble consort was still holding the bestowed jewels, asking her maid whether to make them into bracelets or hairpins. The tassels on her hairpins swayed violently, their jingling sound grating and unpleasant as she screamed herself hoarse. Let go. What are you doing? Don't you dare touch me with your filthy hands. I am the emperor's woman. I am the noble consort, the leader said sternly. The Ying family's illegitimate daughter conspired to rebel, a crime punishable by death. The astonished imperial consort was imprisoned in the dungeon. Levi's face turned deathly pale, white as parchment. The imperial physician wiped sweat from his brow and tremblingly reported to the Empress Dowager that the emperor was beyond saving. The Empress Dowager smashed everything breakable in the room, her eyes bloodshot as she furiously cursed the crowd of incompetents. I stepped forward gracefully, claiming to know a bit about reviving the dead, and thus I became their savior once again. After the Empress Dowager retreated with her entourage in a bustling crowd, only Levi and I remained in the hall. I stared at him intently, my serpentine tail coiling around his neck. Just a slight squeeze would sever his head from his body. The one who smiled with crescent eyes, snuggled with me for warmth, had poor alcohol tolerance, loved to preach, had eyelashes like fluttering butterfly wings. My vibrant sister was killed by him. Overwhelming hatred surged in my heart, as reason slowly drained from the tip of my tail. Boom, a deafening thunderclap snapped me back to reality, and my serpent tail gradually loosened its grip around Levi's neck. The time is not yet right. Levi isn't dead. That pill was a counterfeit death potion someone had substituted. It wasn't me. It was Dashiell. I just put the fake death potion in his hand and let him make his own decision. If he wanted the real Isabella, he had to kill this fake one, and I didn't have to do anything, just wait for the drug to wear off and for Levi to wake up. During that time, I gave the jailers plenty of benefits to have them take good care of Isabella. Everyone believed Isabella's rebellion was a foregone conclusion, and her beheading was only a matter of time. They cheerfully accepted the silver, saying, We won't fail your trust, my lord. When in the mood, I often sneaked into the prison to eavesdrop. The prisoners were all sharp-witted. Seeing me, they doubled their efforts to please me. The piercing screams nearly ruptured my eardrums. Even if she did crawl out of that prison, she'd likely be a madwoman by then. At first, she would still curse loudly, claiming to be the emperor's most beloved concubine, but later, her curses turned into feeble gasps and pleas for mercy. I lifted her blood-stained face with the tip of my shoe. What a shame. I still prefer your defiant demeanor. She glared at me fiercely, as if wanting to devour me alive. Once I get out of here, I swear I'll kill you. I kicked her in the face. You wretch. How dare you stare at me, even if I go out? What difference would it make? 8. Levi woke up. I lay beside him, looking as if I'd been taking care of him tirelessly for a long time. He touched my face, his eyes curved with tenderness. Full of pity. Athena, you've lost so much weight. A clear tear slid down from the corner of my eye. My eyelids reddened. Your Majesty, you've finally awakened. Upon learning that the medicine the imperial concubine offered him was poison, it was I who tirelessly used forbidden arts to revive him. His expression grew complex. He smiled at me and said, Athena, you've saved me again. You truly are my lucky star. The real lucky star was denounced by him as a demon and cruelly killed. Yet he worships me, a calamity, as his lucky star. Oh Levi, you are truly blind to the truth. When Isabella was brought before Levi, she was covered in filth and reeked of a foul stench. Levi frowned and covered his nose with his sleeve. Isabella knelt on the ground, utterly disheveled, crying out her innocence with none of the dignity befitting an imperial consort. Levi rubbed his temples impatiently. The matter has come to this, yet you still dare to quibble. At that moment, a eunuch announced that someone requested an audience. A royal physician knelt straight on the ground, stating that after repeated examinations, the elixir contained no poison, the truly toxic items were other objects in the chamber, and the imperial consort had been deliberately framed. This royal physician was the Ying family's doing. No matter how much they disliked Isabella, they wouldn't let this cash cow fall. Indeed, poison powder was found in Levi's temple. If we were to find out who planted the poison powder, it would take even more effort. The imperial concubine raised her eyebrows and glanced at me, curling the corners of her lips as if to say, see, I've won. It's still too early to celebrate. I returned her smile, but she froze in place. After a long silence, Dashiell suddenly spoke, Your Majesty, when I returned to the fire scene recently, I found this object inside. He signaled the maid beside him to present it, an exquisitely embroidered pouch with lifelike peach blossoms on it. The imperial consort was renowned for her embroidery skills, having once presented 100 flowers painting at Levi's birthday banquet, which was what made Levi truly notice her, and her most skilled embroidery was of peach blossoms. Levi recognized at a glance that this pouch was the imperial consort's personal belonging. Levi clenched the pouch tightly, his face ashen. Imperial consort, do you have anything else to say? The pouch was personally given by Isabella to Dashiell to placate him and ensure his unwavering loyalty in serving her. She collapsed to the ground, looking at Dashiell with utter disbelief, unable to comprehend why the person who once cherished her above all else would now stab her in the back, and this strike pierced straight through the heart. At this moment, I spoke calmly. I believe this imperial physician and I once crossed paths in the noble consort's palace. The imperial physician trembled in fear, beads of sweat the size of peas rolling down his face. Your Excellency jests. This humble official has never met you before. Very well. Perhaps my memory fails me. With just a little investigation, one could uncover the intricate connections between this imperial physician and the Ying family. Levi quickly realized he had been played by the noble consort and the Ying family, his gaze turning even colder as he looked at her. Isabella shook her head like a rattle drum, looking at me then at Dashiell, pointing at me and shouting, It's her, it's this adulterous couple who conspired to frame me. Levi growled, Who are you calling an adulterous couple? Isabella was startled into a daze, then burst into tears like pear blossoms glistening with rain. Your Majesty, my devotion to you is as clear as the sun and moon. In the past, Levi might have softened and listened to her excuses, but now the Ying family was secretly courting court officials in the imperial court, their influence growing ever stronger. In the harem, he doted solely on the noble consort, who allied with the Ying family to plot his demise. Soon the empire would bear the Ying surname, nor could one guarantee the Ying family harbored no rebellious intentions. Isabella had no way to defend herself. It was only after I pleaded with Levi that her life was spared. Though she was banished to the cold palace, at the gates of the cold palace, I raised an eyebrow at Dashiell. I never thought you'd actually go through with it. Dashiell remained expressionless. She's just an imposter. There's nothing to hesitate about. He glanced at me. Don't forget what you promised me. After pulling the imposter out of Isabella's body, Dashiell will take the real Isabella away from the cold palace and flee far away. The medicinal ingredients needed to extract her are the soul-severing grass, snake gall, and dragon's heart blood. I already have the soul-severing grass and snake gall, only this final ingredient is missing. Thud, thud, thud. Isabella desperately banged on the door, screaming wildly, "Let me out, I'm the imperial consort. Not some lowly common girl you can bully at will. I'm the exalted imperial consort who climbed to this position with great difficulty. You can't treat me like this." The physical and mental torment became unbearable for Isabella, driving her to madness. "How noisy." I cast a minor spell to silence her. Dashiell lowered his gaze in contemplation, failing to notice the strangeness in Isabella's words. The corners of my lips curled slightly. I truly wonder what expression he'll make when he learns the truth. 9. After nightfall. I walked barefoot on the stone steps of the violet grove, their surface cool beneath my feet as the evening breeze lifted the sheer gauze of my robes. I tilted my head to gaze at the peach tree, breathing in the fragrance of its blossoms like a spirit born beneath the moonlight. Athena. I turned my head toward the sound, only to find Levi staring in a daze. The imperial consort who had shared his bed for years actually sought his death, tormented by bitterness and melancholy. He had drunk heavily, the flush on his cheeks still lingering. I approached him, fingertips lightly brushing his face. "Your Majesty has drunk so much." His eyes glazed with infatuation, his flushed cheeks growing even hotter. He held my hand and rubbed it against his palm. "Athena, do you care about me?" I gave a distant smile. "It's my duty as your subject." The strong aroma of wine lingered as he tightened his grip on my hand. "I don't want us to be just ruler and subject." "Then what does your Majesty wish us to be?" He wrapped his arm around my waist, his voice trembling. "Husband and wife." I pushed against his chest with one hand, his eyes wounded. "Don't refuse me." I lowered my lashes and relaxed the strength in my hand. Overjoyed, he swept me up in his arms and carried me straight to my palace. Just as he was about to reach Chinua Palace, I called out to stop him, my hand clutched tightly at his chest. "Your Majesty, don't go," he asked in confusion. "What's wrong?" I looked at him with tearful eyes. "Don't go over there," he panicked. "What's happening? You were fine just now. Why are you crying?" He set me down and reached out to wipe my tears, but I suddenly fell to my knees with a thud, my voice choked with sobs. "Your Majesty, I have failed you. I am guilty." He quickly helped me up, saying, "Get up first, then speak." I told him it wasn't the imperial consort who wanted to harm him, but the state preceptor. The Grand Preceptor had long harbored treasonous intentions. The elixir had been swapped by him, the fire in the Hall of Mental Cultivation was also set by the Grand Preceptor, and the sachet found in the ashes was entirely fabricated. The noble consort was merely a scapegoat the Grand Preceptor prepared for himself. I was cursed by the Grand Preceptor and forced to obey his orders, but during our time together, I developed feelings for Levi, several times. I risked being killed by the Grand Preceptor to save Levi. As I spoke, I coughed up another mouthful of blood, my face deathly pale. I forced a smile at Levi. "Your Majesty, I have betrayed the Grand Preceptor. The curse is rebounding, and I fear my time is short. The Grand Preceptor is greedy. He ordered me to lead your Majesty to the Clear Moon Palace, where he lies in ambush, intending to strike you down with a single fatal blow." I hunched my back, trembling all over as blood continuously gushed from my mouth. He flusteredly supported me, his face filled with compassion. "Athena, this isn't your fault." Disregarding the filth, he used his sleeve to wipe the blood from the corner of my mouth. "You've suffered." I never realized the Grand Preceptor harbored such intentions. I shook my head and offered a fragile smile. "It's not bitter. Your servant's heart delights in your Majesty. Even if it meant dying for your Majesty, your servant would not hesitate." He pulled me into his embrace. "Rest assured, this emperor won't let you die." 10. With my reminder, who between Levi and Dashiell will gain the upper hand? Levi arrived with a troop of imperial guards, while Dashiell would fight with all his might for the resurrection of his beloved. I went to the cold palace, where Isabella was huddled in a corner, looking deranged and constantly muttering to herself, "I am the noble consort, soon I will be the empress. I will be the most honored woman in the world. I really want to tear her mouth apart." I lay on the recliner, waiting for the victor's return. The sound of footsteps grew closer, and as I looked up, it was Dashiell. He was covered in wounds, barely able to stand steady while leaning against the doorframe. Clearly, it had been a fierce battle. Even outnumbered 10-1, he could still achieve a great victory. He must have used magic. The gap between humans and demons is vast, and the same goes for cultivators. If Dashiell had the slightest intention to kill him, he would be doomed without a doubt. Dashiell panted heavily, placing a glass vial filled with blood before me, dragon's heart blood. He knew I was behind this mischief, but at this point, he still needed my help. I dropped the serpent pearl into it, and the blood in the vial was quickly consumed. I handed him the serpent pearl. "Just have her swallow this, and your Isabella will return." "Okay." He took the snake elixir and staggered over to feed it to Isabella. Isabella's eyes widened as she clawed at her throat, convulsing and curling into a ball on the ground as if in unbearable agony. With hopeful eyes, Dashiell pleaded almost desperately, "Isabella, come back," but things often go against our wishes. Until Isabella took her last breath, there was no sign of his Isabella returning. Isabella's bloodshot eyes fixed intently on Dashiell, as if saying, "Brother Dashiell, why did you kill me?" Dashiell took 2 steps back, incredulous. "Why is it like this? It shouldn't be this way," I burst out laughing. "What are you laughing at?" "Laugh at your blindness. You personally caused the death of your beloved. How could a mere mortal withstand a millennium-old serpent's core? The dragon's heart blood was merely nourishment I intended for my sister's reformation." The lies shattered, revealing the naked truth. There was never a case of dual souls in one body. Didn't the deranged Isabella say it herself? She wasn't the illegitimate daughter, but the exalted imperial consort, from beginning to end. The one inside that shell was always the Ying family's illegitimate daughter, Isabella. It was merely his childhood sweetheart growing fickle and changing her heart. Was it a drastic change in temperament after drowning, or did Dashiell simply refuse to believe her filthy core? Isabella loves no one, she only loves power. After another concubine-born daughter of the Ying family entered the palace and won the emperor's favor, the entire Ying household began to value her and revolve around her. That concubine-born daughter, who had once been bullied by Isabella, took this opportunity to push Isabella into the lake to settle old scores. After Isabella was rescued, even her own mother advised her to be magnanimous. At that moment, Isabella realized that even a concubine-born daughter could wield such power. Memories of past humiliations and oppressions flashed through her mind, overwhelming her with surging resentment and unwillingness. Forging a new Isabella, she thought, she must enter the palace, she must become the most revered woman in the entire realm. Only power could bring her everything she desired. She had several lovers behind Dashiell's back. Dashiell was merely the most reliable power she could lean on during her impoverished days. Once she was certain Dashiell wouldn't leave her, she grew disgusted with the act of pleasing him and couldn't be bothered to waste any more time on him. After all, the power she could now rely on most was the Emperor himself. The past that Dashiell cherished meant nothing to her. She'd shared histories with many, and Dashiell was just one among them. She only began to care about Dashiell after realizing he could provide her value. Why would she remember some bygone past? Dashiell was merely the most valuable fish in her vast sea of admirers. Yet poor Dashiell foolishly believed himself unique in her heart. If not for lovesickness, he might have made a fine cultivator. Dashiell's lips trembled as he asked me, "What are you saying?" I gazed at him with amused interest. The 2 souls in one body was nothing but a lie. How foolish of you to believe it so deeply. She has always been Isabella from the very beginning. You just refuse to admit that the one you love is a snob. I merely gave you a sliver of hope, and you eagerly took the bait." His eyes bulged with rage as he lunged at me like a madman. "Lies, you demon, I'll kill you." I sidestepped, and he fell flat on the ground, never to rise again. Endless rage enveloped him, so much so that he failed to notice the abnormalities in his own body. I pinched his chin. "Divine medicine, tastes good." After his bait and switch, he consumed the divine medicine himself. I had mixed something extra into it. Forcibly activating magic arts would rupture his liver and destroy all his meridians. This restraint only works on cultivators. The divine medicine was meant for the Emperor. I did nothing. Dashiell brought this upon himself. After a fierce battle with Levi, he exhausted all his strength. His internal organs shattered, now at death's door. Only then did he belatedly realize that medicine was tainted. Like a dying fish thrashing pointlessly, he gasped, "Give Isabella back to me. You killed my Isabella, you demon. I'll kill you." 10,000 knelt in worship, proclaiming me their divine maiden. Again, he shouted, his voice gradually breaking into sobs. When he looked up again, tears were streaming down his face. He grabbed the hem of my clothes, his face a disgusting mess of tears and snot. "You can bring people back to life, right? Please, save Isabella." Isabella didn't know any better. She was just influenced by me. "Please spare her." I kicked him away. "When you killed my sister, did you ever show her any mercy?" I buried Dashiell and Isabella together. 11. Dashiell once said it was all my fault, that my sudden appearance caused the Northern Wars, leaving him an orphan. I don't understand. Would the world have been peaceful, free from disasters and wars if I hadn't appeared? Whether to wage war was their own choice, so why blame me for it? The snake core of my sister sensed my unusual state, flickering with golden light as it tried to comfort me. I clutched it tightly against my chest. "Sister, I miss you so much." Carrying the snake core, I hid deep in the ancient mountains. Whether it be 1,000 years or 10,000, I will always stay by her side. No one shall ever separate us again. The end. Story 2. My best friend got infected. To avoid becoming a monster myself, I abandoned her, in the dead of night, plagued by guilt. I quietly brought her some food, yet, with a sinister smile, she pulled me into her embrace. Humans need food, but you are my food. Humanity has been invaded by an unknown virus that strikes those who feel guilt for their misdeeds. The epidemic is severe, and the streets are filled with people who suddenly fall ill and can no longer move. Vehicles can't get through, so most people walk. Occasionally, you might see someone on a bicycle, but they are very cautious, stopping and keeping their distance as soon as they see a pedestrian. My mom no longer has to worry about me not looking for cars when crossing the street. There are more infected people on the streets than yesterday, and I'm a bit scared. I keep my head down and walk quickly. I got up a bit late today and need to hurry to school to avoid being late, that is, until someone pats my shoulder heavily. One Maud, did you break your neck? You can't just walk into people like that. Turning around, I see Mary, first delighted, then nervously stepping back. Don't you know you shouldn't talk on the streets? She nonchalantly links her arm with mine. What does it matter? My conscience was eaten by a dog long ago. Her demeanor makes me laugh, and I pull her along towards school, with Mary by my side. The standing infected don't seem so frightening, but the stretch of road near the school still feels oppressively heavy. Those people look familiar. They must be parents who drop off their children, or vendors who usually sell things at the school gate. Our English teacher, Martha, stands across the street, staring at us with swollen, tearful eyes like a dead fish. Instinctively, I grip Mary's arm tighter. Look, teacher, Martha got hit too. She doesn't look back, pulling me to walk faster, panting a reminder. Don't think we're safe just because we're at school. Safe once inside the school. As soon as we enter the gate, we see the path leading to the teaching building packed with people, their conditions dreadful, their legs fused to the ground, students who couldn't make it home after school yesterday. The epidemic has reached our campus, and we stand frozen. What are you doing? Get to your classroom now. A robust male voice startles me. I see the security guard approaching fast with his baton. Hasn't anyone told you that you can't just stand around outside? I'm usually a bit scared of him, and now, with the situation being what it is, I pull Mary away, but after a few steps, we're forced to stop. Mary isn't moving. A chill goes down my spine as I suppress my fear and turn back, facing Mary's despairing look. She stands still, her arms stretched out stiffly by my pull, her feet as if welded to the ground, immovable. My tear ducts start working overtime, blurring the Mary before my eyes, and everything around becomes surreal. How I wish this were just a dream. I can't tell who let go of whose hand first, but as the security guard carries me into the classroom, I'm already sobbing convulsively. Mary, my best friend, always the one to console me during tough times. It's hard to believe that such a carefree girl could also succumb to the disease. There's no way classes can continue as normal, to avoid affecting the other students' emotions. The math teacher lets me rest in the office during the first period. It's not a good idea, because from the office window, I can see Mary downstairs. Although the teacher repeatedly reminds me not to approach the window, I can't help but sneak peeks outside. She's calmer than this morning, no longer crying. The sun slowly climbs over the rooftop, and the sunlight even makes her look somewhat beautiful. It's hard to imagine that such a vibrant life could be nearing its end so quickly, having seen this so often. It no longer scares me. My biggest feeling now is regret. Regret for not having properly said goodbye to her. Despite the repeated warnings from adults, I shouldn't talk to anyone I know who's infected, but I believe Mary wouldn't harm me. Even if I stayed with her all day, she wouldn't ask me for anything. While I was lost in thought at the windowsill, my collar was suddenly yanked with great force. After a moment of dizziness, I saw my mother's angry face. Slap. A harsh slap landed on my face. I stood there, head bowed and hand covering my cheek, too guilty to meet her eyes. What's wrong with you, child? Are you out of your mind? Tell me, are you sick? With each scolding, she struck my face and neck harder. The pain was burning, yet I still didn't dare to look up. Mrs. Maud, please calm down. Come sit over here. Thank heavens, my homeroom teacher, Mrs. Martina, finally came back to save me, but she was too frail, no match for my mother. After being pushed several times by my mom, she also became frantic and shouted, Mrs. Maud, she's your own daughter. You'll regret this after hitting her. Do you even know what regret means? My mother's hand stopped midair, and Mrs. Martina half pushed, half pulled her aside to rest. Mrs. Maud, I called you here because Maud and Mary are too close. They came to school hand in hand again this morning. My mother cried. What sins have I committed? What has the world come to? I secretly turned my head to look at the familiar figure on the playground. I too wanted to know. What has the world come to? Recently, a previously unknown virus began to spread quietly. The first case that caught attention was a man standing in the middle of the road during rush hour, causing severe traffic jams. When traffic police arrived, they couldn't communicate with him as he was highly agitated. continuously shouting, "My legs, my legs." When a police officer rolled up his trouser leg, he saw a horrifying sight. Hundreds of hair-thin bloodlines extended from the man's calf into the hard asphalt road. It was as if roots had grown from the man, anchoring him to the ground. This bizarre scene quickly attracted onlookers. When someone touched the thin lines on his leg, the man screamed as if being tortured. Initially, everyone thought it was a prank or performance art. The police enforced the law firmly, attempting to drive the man away. Despite his desperate pleas, his emotions became extremely agitated, but outnumbered. He was eventually lifted off the ground. The moment his feet left the earth, he screamed tragically and died with his eyes wide open. The body was taken for an autopsy, and the coroner said those bloodlines were mutated nerve cells. The man had died in excruciating pain. Before the incident could escalate, new cases began to appear worldwide. Some wandered the streets in their sleep, others suddenly couldn't walk on their way to work. Suddenly, the streets were filled with vegetative people. Some died of pain during the forced removal, others starved to death. Batch after batch of doctors and biologists couldn't determine the type of virus, find a cause of infection, detect the virus, or find any link between the infected. Suddenly, people became anxious. They started wearing masks and protective suits. And some even moved away from infected cities, but none of these measures worked. The epidemic spread at an unimaginable rate. As the number of cases slowly increased, experts noticed that most of the infected stuck on the roads would reflect on the worst deeds and events of their lives, endlessly confessing their past actions. A theory began to circulate online: if you commit a wrong, you'll get infected. Thus, this virus was affectionately called the angel virus. With its emergence, no one dared to do evil anymore. Those who did turned into vegetative people, dying from sun exposure or starvation. Society no longer needed laws or supervision. Everyone became a law-abiding good citizen. Some claimed this epidemic was purifying, weeding out the harmful elements of humanity. I completely disagree with such views. Mary is just a high school freshman. What did she do wrong? Just before the end of the first class, my mom hurried me out of school. She pulled me along so quickly that we almost stumbled as we passed by Mary. I still didn't get a chance to say goodbye to her, and what upset me more was that my mom had also confiscated my phone. She told me I couldn't go to school until after Mary was taken away. My mom is very assertive, and has always been the one in charge ever since I was little. I never dared to defy her. She doesn't understand me at all, nor does she care about how I feel. All I could do was lock myself in my bedroom, silently defying her in the only way I could. I didn't go out for lunch, and for dinner, Mom left the food at my door with a few words of instruction before she went to work. I listened at the door until I was sure the house was quiet, then I opened the door to bring the food in. Tonight's dinner was braised pork and blanched choy sum, both of which Mary loved. I barely managed a few bites before tears uncontrollably started falling again. How is Mary now? Is anyone taking her meals? I couldn't help feeling guilty. Even if I couldn't save her, I should have stayed with her, at least to help her through the initial fear and despair, but I did nothing. I was the first to let go of her hand. Yes, I let go first. I was so scared when I saw her unable to move. I instinctively shook off her hand. Even if the security guard hadn't come to pull me away, I would have run off on my own. A tingling sensation in the sole of my foot made me jump up instinctively, grabbing my foot and crying heartbreakingly. Was I also sick? Had I turned into one of those tree people rooted to the ground? It was only when a small mosquito bite began to swell that my blood started circulating again. I was really scared just now. I don't want to die, but I did something wrong and couldn't escape the condemnation of my conscience. Sooner or later, the disease would catch up with me. After a long hesitation, I made a bold decision to go see Mary. Bringing her some food might ease my conscience a bit. After nightfall, I heated up the dinner my mom left and carefully packed it in a thermal bag. Before leaving, I prepared thoroughly, turning up the volume in my headphones to the maximum so I couldn't hear what people around me were saying. I had never been out alone at night before and thought it would be frightening, but it turned out to be much better than during the day. The infected were all sleeping with their eyes closed, showing no reaction as I passed. The biggest challenge turned out to be climbing the fence. The school gates were locked, and it took a lot of effort to climb into the schoolyard. The situation there was similar to outside, everyone motionless with their eyes closed. I carefully navigated through the crowd and soon found Mary. Although we were best friends, it's wise to be cautious. I approached her from behind, handing her a note I had prepared beforehand, and gently woke her up. The streetlights in the school were bright enough for her to read the message on the note, which laid out 3 conditions. My name is Maud, and I've brought you some food, but you must agree to 3 things before I can give it to you. 1. Do not turn around. 2. Do not speak. 3. Do not make any requests in any form. If you can do these, nod your head. I can see you from behind. Mary nodded, so I took back the note and handed over the food box. I had initially planned to simply deliver a lovingly prepared meal and leave immediately, but seeing her devour the food so desperately made me feel sad. I gently took off my headphones and asked her quietly, "Have your parents visited you?" Her movements paused as she ate, then she gently shook her head. A lump formed in my throat, and without thinking, I blurted out, "Is there anything else I can do for you?" As soon as I said it, I regretted it. Nowadays, people are especially afraid of the infected, not because the infected spread the virus, but because they dread their requests for help. If you hear their plea and do nothing, it weighs on your conscience. Moreover, given the dire straits of the infected, it's hard for anyone to not feel guilty. Even a slight sense of guilt can give the virus a chance to infect you. Everyone knows that you shouldn't talk to an infected person you recognize. Even a 3-year-old knows this, but what was I doing? I had actually asked her if she needed help, Mary, if she had asked me to save her, or even to end her suffering. I know I couldn't have done it. The only outcome would be for me to stay and keep her company, but she said nothing, just shook her head and cried. Her pitiful appearance broke my heart. I pulled out a half-pack of tissues and went around to her front to wipe her tears, but I ended up crying even more miserably than she did. My crying woke the other infected individuals around us, and the area started to get restless. Mary put the headphones back on me, and we began to communicate in writing. "Mary, are you in pain? It hurts. I dare not move my legs. It's excruciating, where the roots have grown. There's a sticky fluid leaking, sticking my shoes to the ground." I clutched the notebook for a long time before I managed to scrawl, "You have to hang in there. Any disease can be cured. As long as you're alive, there's hope. Maybe there will be a cure tomorrow." She nodded through her tears, and before I could write again, a security guard rushed over and dragged me into the booth. "Little girl, are you tired of living?" He then started calling my mother. I stood quietly to the side, waiting for him to calm down. I knew my mother wouldn't answer a call from a stranger, fearing it might be an infected person. After all, infected people can make requests over the phone too, and some people would do anything to stay alive, regardless of what happens to others. Indeed, she didn't pick up. After the guard tried several times, he gave up and turned to me, his face fierce with anger. I humbly apologized. "I'm sorry. I just felt so guilty and wanted to make amends. I promise this will be the last time. It won't happen again. Next time, do you even think you'll make it home again?" It seemed he was letting me go. I quickly nodded. "Yes, I know the way home. My house isn't far from the school. Are you going to escort me back?" "You wish. With everything going on, I certainly can't escort you," he sighed. "Just get going, and be careful on the way. I won't ask which class you're from. This broken school won't last much longer anyway." I bowed and ran off quickly, not forgetting to look back at Mary. She was also looking back at me. I waved at her and felt a sense of relief as I passed through the gate. I thought to myself, I might not get infected after all. Early the next morning, I was awakened by an alarm. The house was empty. My mom hadn't come home from work yet. The young couple next door were both crying and laughing, and the noise only got worse when I opened the window. Many people were hanging clothes and sheets out the window marked prominently with SOS. Not knowing what had happened, I rushed back inside to turn on the TV. All channels were broadcasting the same message. "Rescue teams have been dispatched to major communities in the city. Please cooperate with the rescue personnel for an orderly evacuation." Just then, there was a knock at the door. "Residents of this building, please take your valuables and gather downstairs." I had no doubt about the authenticity of the notice, especially in a time when a virus oversees human nature. Nobody dares to lie or harbor any evil thoughts, but I can't leave, because my mother hasn't returned yet. She took my phone, and if I were to leave with the rescue team, she would be frantic with worry. There's no safe place left in the city. Who knows how far away she might be? I want to be with her. Though my mother has a temper, she is, after all, the one who gave birth to me and raised me. I can't just leave her to fend for herself. The noise outside the door gradually subsided, and the sound of engines starting echoed from below. I ran to the window to see 2 container trucks slowly driving away, but the streets were full of the infected, and where the trucks passed, they brutally carved a bloodied path. The cheers of the saved slowly died down, replaced by the desperate wails of the infected. I don't know what hell looks like, but at this moment, the street below is a true purgatory on earth. Suddenly, I thought of Mary. Would she be treated the same, turned into an unrecognizable mass of flesh and blood under the wheels? Have the infected been abandoned? The stench of blood in the air was nauseating. I closed the window tightly and crawled under the covers, trying my best not to listen to the cries and roars outside. I fell into a restless sleep, and when I woke up, it was already evening. and my mother still hadn't returned. I peered out the window again. The road below had turned a dark red, and mutilated bodies were scattered everywhere along the sidewalk. Although some of the infected had miraculously survived, they were covered in blood. Some of them might have gone mad, emitting laughter and cries that were unlike any human sound. The noise irritated me, and my current situation made me uneasy. I somewhat regretted not leaving with the rescue team. Seeing such a scene made me even more afraid to go downstairs, but where could my mother be? I was very worried about her. After nightfall, my mother still hadn't returned. The wailing outside gradually subsided, and the entire city fell into a deathly silence. Thinking about the dead-filled streets during the day, I dared not go down. I hadn't eaten all day, and finally, my stomach began to growl. I went to the fridge and opened it, finding only half a bottle of jam. Not giving up, I opened the freezer, but it was empty. Where had all our food gone? Didn't my mom make braised pork and stir-fried vegetables last night? I rushed to the kitchen and rummaged through the cabinets top to bottom. Apart from some odd spices, there was nothing. Not even the sugar jar was spared. What was going on? Confused, I wanted to call my mom, but then remembered my phone had been taken away. Hoping for the best, I went to my mom's bedroom. Usually, if I did something wrong, she'd take my phone and carry it with her in her bag to prevent me from secretly taking it back while she was at work. But now, in these extraordinary times, could she really be at ease not being able to contact me? I searched her room and finally found my phone under the pillow. There was a string of missed calls, all from Mom. Unfortunately, my phone was on vibrate mode, and I hadn't heard anything through the thick door. I immediately unlocked my phone and called back, only to be greeted with the message, "Sorry, the phone you are calling is switched off." Disappointed, I hung up the phone, then noticed there was a text message, also from my mom. "Maud, whatever you do, do not go with the rescue vehicle." I was shocked. Why shouldn't I go with the rescue team? Could they have ulterior motives? Thinking about how they treated the infected, a chill ran down my spine. Holding the phone, I paused for a moment, then called Mary. The phone connected after just one ring, and a weak voice came through. "Maud, oh my goodness, I really wanted to tell her that I was hungry too, but now is not the time to discuss our basic needs." I urgently asked her, "Are you okay? Has the rescue team reached the school?" "Rescue team? What rescue team? Have they found a way to save us? I'm not really sure what's happening." I didn't want to tell her about the horrific scenes I had witnessed that morning, so I quickly changed the subject. "Mary, why is your phone still working? I've been afraid to use it, worried that my parents wouldn't be able to find me." Her words saddened me. Mary didn't know yet that her parents had already left with the rescue team. They had given up on their daughter. I decided not to tell her this, and just hurriedly said, "I'm coming to find you." Before hanging up, I was going to find Mary. It was better to die with the infected than to wait around for death. At night, it indeed felt safer than during the day. The infected along the way were all asleep, motionless in the shadows. The city's electrical system had stopped working. It seemed that all uninfected people had evacuated. The city had been completely abandoned. Tonight, the moon was big and round, bright enough for me to see the way to the school. I had overestimated my ability to handle this. The smell of blood along the way was still strong, making me vomit a few times. I was completely drained. Only my willpower kept me moving step by step towards the school. Fortunately, the school was still a sanctuary, not yet overrun by the rescue team's trucks. I climbed over the school wall and easily found Mary. She looked terribly thin but still managed a weak smile at me, which I returned with a grimace that looked more like a cry. I raided the school's snack bar, grabbing a big bag of colorful snacks, and we started eating under the moonlight. Her school pants were torn, and her feet had turned into unsightly large tumors. Pretending to grab some snacks, I crouched down to secretly examine her feet. Her shoes had burst open from the mutated feet, surrounded by countless red bloodlines expanding like plant roots, spreading deeper and wider to absorb more nutrients. "Maud, stay and keep me company." I looked up, incredulous, and saw her gaunt face breaking into a bizarre, unsettling smile. I wanted to run, but it was too late. She grabbed my hair and stuffed it into her stomach. Something inside clung tightly to my hair, pulling painfully at my scalp, leaving me unable to break free. Exhausted from struggling, I just sat on the ground and cried, cursing Mary for being heartless. She wasn't annoyed. Instead, she giggled and comforted me. "Maud, what's wrong with being a tree? You can live a long life. You can't yet appreciate the feeling of being completely merged with nature. It's truly comforting." I had considered all possibilities, but I never expected Mary to lose her mind. A madman isn't held legally responsible for killing, especially not an infected one. Soon, we had finished all the snacks. The bags looked full, but there was hardly anything inside. I begged Mary to let me go back to the snack bar for more, but she just laughed at me. "Maud, remember what we learned in biology about grafting? Have you ever seen a grafted plant grow legs and run? So I was just a grafted seedling?" But I was hungry, and so was Mary, yet she said she wouldn't be hungry if she ate me. My hair was pulled tight, preventing me from turning around, and I didn't know what she had used to bind me, but it was clearly alive, and it was tightening gradually. Last night I could still kneel, now I had to stay completely upright. It felt as if I was kneeling and confessing to all the infected present, but I wasn't the one who should be confessing. I have no idea how Mary managed to stand for days and nights on end. Just kneeling for one night left me with a sore back and aching waist. I dozed off against her, her body as rigid as a tree trunk, which only made the pain in my back worse. By nighttime, my scalp was painfully tugged, and sleep was impossible. Mary hadn't spoken in a long time. I guessed she might be asleep, or, thinking about it differently, perhaps the infected had become plant-like, unable to perform photosynthesis without the sun and thus were in a state of dormancy. Whatever the case, now was my chance to act. Thankfully, fearing I wouldn't find a place to eat when I left home, I had deliberately brought a lighter with me, although I was reluctant to part with the hair I had grown for over 2 years. At that moment, survival was paramount. After striking the flint several times, a small flame finally leaped forth. My hair caught fire quickly, and my scalp felt the heat almost instantly. By the time my head was free from Mary, it was burning intensely. Fortunately, I was prepared and quickly doused my head with a bottle of mineral water I twisted open, which brought some relief. Before I could even celebrate surviving the ordeal, my collar was forcefully grabbed, and then my neck was tightly squeezed. Mary's angry voice rang in my ears, "Dare to burn me, and we'll go to hell together." The air was filled with suffocating smoke and stench. I couldn't stop coughing, and my back felt as if it was on fire. When I lit my hair, I had inadvertently set Mary on fire too. No, unable to break free, it seemed I was living out the saying, not seeking to share the same birth, but willing to die on the same day. My best friend, your passing is not in vain, at least you have me as your funeral companion. A sweet liquid flowed down my throat, and I groaned as I woke up. The first thing I saw was the enlarged face of our class leader, Wyatt. Wyatt was famously handsome at school, with a face that could leave anyone speechless. The last time I fell asleep during a study session, he had woken me up by coming just as close, which was embarrassingly awkward. Was this all a nightmare? Blushing, I sat up and saw the familiar classroom and desks. However, the now more pained expressions on the faces around me reminded me that this was all real. "Maud, how are you feeling? Want to eat something?" I weakly shook my head and turned to look out the window, where a tree burned silently. "Mary, I'm sorry, forget it, don't look, it's no use, put this on." I was forcibly fitted with a headset, which scraped my scalp as it was put on, causing me to wince in pain and instinctively reach to take it off, but Wyatt firmly held my hand. He was speaking, but the music in the headset was too loud. I couldn't hear anything. He repeated himself a few times before understanding my confusion from my blank expression. Then he took a pen and paper to write. "This is to prevent you from being misled by the infected outside. You must wear it 24 hours a day, even in your sleep, understand?" Seeing Wyatt's serious expression, I obediently nodded. Then another question popped into my mind, and I quickly grabbed the pen and paper to write. "How did you guys end up here?" "It was the rescue team that placed us here. We need to be quarantined for a while to confirm that no one is infected before we can be taken away. We just saw you burning below from the window, so a few of us went down to rescue you." I smiled and nodded in thanks to him. That was the only good news I had received today. There were still healthy people in the city, and I was no longer alone. However, I couldn't fully rejoice just yet, because my mom's message still rings in my ears. "Do not go with the rescue team." Why can't I go with the rescue team? Could it be that they aren't really here to save people? In high school, there are no dormitories, and of course, no beds. Those of us who survived made do by piecing together tables to sleep on. As you can imagine, my sleep quality was poor. This was compounded by the deafening music blasting through my headphones, making me seriously suspect I had gone deaf. The food was terrible too, just some rock-hard rations accompanied by a limited supply of bottled water. I didn't even have the strength to climb off the tables, and by the looks of it, neither did anyone else, except for Wyatt, who still had the energy to distribute food and water to everyone. When he came over to me, besides the usual rations, he slipped me a note. I eagerly opened it, and it read, "I saw your mom when I was evacuating. She was taken away by the rescue team, so don't worry. You'll be reunited soon." My scalp tingled and I jumped off the table, chasing after him. "Where did you see my mom? Did she go with the rescue team willingly?" He was startled by my reaction, and it took him a moment to hand me a pen and paper. Communicating in writing was terribly slow, but fortunately, we figured everything out. My mom had been taken away near her workplace in the morning. She seemed reluctant, probably worried about me being home alone. But the rescuers didn't listen to her and just shoved her into a vehicle. Hearing that my mom was taken away brought me a slight sense of relief. At least she was alive and not infected. like Wyatt said, maybe after the quarantine period, we could leave and reunite. Lost in thoughts of reuniting with my mom, I clutched Wyatt's note and lay back down on my designated table. Suddenly, a person in camouflage appeared at the door, carrying a large black bag. The others around didn't react much. Seemingly used to this by now, he was here to change the batteries in our headsets. When he opened the black bag, a stack of size 5 batteries was revealed. He worked diligently and refused Wyatt's offer to help, changing the batteries one by himself. When he got to me, perhaps startled by my scabby scalp, he frowned with a worried look. The music stopped as he took the batteries out of my headset. Although my ears were still ringing, I could at least hear him speak. He asked, "What happened to your head? I'll bring you some medicine tomorrow." I smiled at him and then asked, "When can we get out of quarantine?" The new batteries were installed, and the blaring music started again. He moved on without pausing, and from his lip movements, I roughly made out that his answer was "I don't know." Just when a spark of hope had ignited, it was cruelly extinguished. My mother's words surfaced again, questioning whether these rescuers could be trusted. Thinking it over, many doubts arose. In the face of such a mysterious virus, shouldn't the frontliners be medical staff, or at the very least, police or firefighters? Why are these people in camouflage, with no clear identities? And besides, we're still in quarantine, so why can they enter without any protective measures? I quietly wrote down my questions and showed them to Wyatt. His eyes widened in shock, his hands trembling uncontrollably as he held the note. Wyatt pulled me to an empty stairwell, took off his headset, and asked, "How come you're thinking so much? Do you know something I don't?" I shook my head and countered, "Is there something else?" He slumped to the ground as if deflated. "You came late and don't know. Originally, there were many people here. Every classroom was filled from top to bottom. Then they were taken away in batches, including my parents. No, only us kids are left." I was shocked, my mouth agape. "Where did they all go?" He gave a wry smile and shook his head. "How would I know about such things? The adults always think we're too naive and never share anything with us." Suddenly, I remembered something and crouched in front of him, asking eagerly, "When did you say you saw my mom being taken away?" "The morning after you didn't come to class." "That can't be right. Are you sure you're not mistaken?" He shook his head firmly. "I'm absolutely sure. That morning, Mary fell ill. And then you didn't come to class either. We all wondered if you had fallen ill too. The next day, my mom wouldn't let me go to school, so it definitely happened then." Oh my, what have I discovered? My mom sent me a warning message the night after, but Wyatt said he saw my mom being taken away the morning of the next day. This means that the rescue times for Wyatt's area and our area were the same. While I was hesitating whether to wait for my mom to come back, she had already been taken away by the rescue team. It was nearly 10 hours after she was taken that she managed to send me a message warning me not to go with the rescue team. In those few hours, she was in a temporary quarantine set up by the rescue team. What on earth did she see there that made her tell me not to get on the rescue team's vehicle? I shared my findings with Wyatt, and he too was shocked. If my mom had said that, it suggested something was wrong with the rescue team. That meant that those who had already been taken away, including Wyatt's parents, were likely in danger. His expression turned particularly grim, and I felt just as terrible. We sat in silence for a long time before he sighed and said, "Let's go back. It's time for the meal distribution. I'll try to find out more today. Wait for my message." I nodded, put on my headphones, and we walked into the classroom one after the other. If you think about it carefully, you can spot many inconsistencies. For instance, where could so many outdated headsets come from, and why did none of them have an off switch? As long as the batteries were charged, they would continuously play at maximum volume. Clearly, these had been modified, but what were they making us wear these for? I didn't believe it was just to prevent us from hearing the infected outside speak. Those infected would sleep as soon as the sun set, and without external stimuli, they wouldn't make a sound at night. Even a monk would envy their routine. As evening approached, Wyatt handed me a note with just a brief sentence: "Something's wrong here. Let's leave together at 11 p.m. tonight." I wanted to ask him how many people the word "us" on the note referred to, but by the time I looked up from the note, he had already disappeared. Wyatt was the only one allowed downstairs, and he was responsible for everyone's meals in the building. Compared to us, he surely had better access to internal information. Right, so I chose to trust him. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a nudge and saw a room full of bright eyes. It turned out that by us, Wyatt meant all of us. Under his lead, we took whatever food and water we had and followed one another down the stairs. The infected downstairs had mostly transformed, now standing motionless with their eyes closed under the moonlight, truly resembling trees. I took off my headset and ran to catch up with Wyatt, who was leading the way. "What did you find out?" Wyatt looked around nervously, his eyes full of tension. He reached out to help me put my headset back on, but I quickly took his off as well. "Don't worry, these infected will sleep at night." He looked around guiltily before frowning and asking me, "What are you trying to do?" I repeated my earlier question, "What did you find out?" He started to get impatient. "What do you mean, find out? They're here to rescue us. Let's get back to the group before they start counting and mess up the numbers." I stood there, struck by his words, as if struck by lightning. Weren't we supposed to run away? Why did we get back in the car? Could it be that Wyatt has been bought off? I no longer have time to think about this. My intuition tells me that I must not get on the rescue team's container truck. Looking back, I see a continual stream of people leaving the building, their expressions blank, looking like zombies under the moonlight. Going back against the crowd would be too conspicuous. The only option is to hide in the convenience store. The school's convenience store has a separate entrance on the side of the academic building. Hiding there until everyone leaves might still offer a chance to escape, so crouching down, I dash to the base of the wall and, using the shadow of the perimeter wall for cover, I quickly make my way towards the convenience store. I keep my head down, focusing all my attention on my feet, thinking to move faster and faster. Unexpectedly, there is someone standing by the wall. I crash into them, and due to the inertia, we both fall over. The person looks young, somewhat familiar. Probably a senior student from the upper grades. My heart races to my throat. I continuously bow in apology and place my finger on my lips, pleading for silence. But how easy is it really to buy someone's silence? With a sinister laugh, he takes off his headphones and yells louder than the music that had been playing, "Someone is trying to escape. Someone wants to die. Let everyone die. It will make a hero in 18 years. Ha." His voice is so loud, it makes my heart tremble. But after a while, when there's no response, I realize that everyone around has their headsets on and can't hear his rant. His eyes gleaming with madness, he lunges forward, grabs my legs, and starts dragging me towards the group, ranting, "If we are to die, let's die together. It'll be easier to gather a table for a game of cards in the underworld." I'm petrified, my back painfully scraping the ground, lacking the strength to get up as I sweat profusely, and cries of agony begin to fill the air. The crowd becomes chaotic, some running out, others running back in. Everyone is colliding, falling, and getting up to run again. The scene spirals out of control, and I curl up as small as possible, praying that the panicked people don't step on my face. Screams are everywhere, reminiscent of the day the rescue convoy ran over the infected. A real hell on earth. Blood pools into rivulets on the ground, and as the hurried footsteps begin to wane, I dare to slowly sit up. What a horrifying scene it is. The mad seniors shouting has awakened the infected, who start hunting as soon as they open their eyes. They grab any living thing within reach, scratching and biting like wild beasts, eagerly devouring the healthy. The mad senior is not far from me, each of his arms fiercely gripped by an infected, munching on them as if they were carrots. One has already bitten down to his wrist, the other still gnawing at his palm. Blood sprays like a fountain, drenching both infected in red. More shocking than the most horrifying movie, the mad senior's head droops lifelessly, seemingly unconscious. I almost envy him. My gall is nearly vomited out, but why can't I faint? Several beams of flashlight shine through the school's gate, illuminating this hell on earth as bright as day. These are special flashlights, so bright that I can hardly open my eyes. The screams continue by my ears, the air thick with the stench of blood making me nauseous. I think I'm about to die. I even find myself wishing for death to come quickly, to end my torment. A loudspeaker at the gate shouts, "Crawl out, keep your stomachs as close to the ground as possible." Their legs have vegetated, they can't bend at the waist. "Keep your center of gravity low," the voice continues, encouraging me to crawl bit by bit towards the gate. Blood has pooled into rivers, and I crawl through this river of blood, inching forward. By the time I reached the door, my clothes were completely soaked in blood. Someone reached through the gate and dragged me out like a dead dog. It was only when I was behind the flashlights that I realized the person who had been encouraging me to survive was actually the rescue team. Wyatt took off his jacket and draped it over me, but I was ungrateful and indifferently threw the jacket to the ground, as someone from the rescue team helped me onto a container. It was very dark inside. Only a bit of moonlight came through the door. Their eyes, shiny and filled with terror, stared at me. The person next to me kept shrinking back. I think they were scared off by the smell of blood on me. Fortunately, several more blood-soaked people boarded, and we sat huddled with our knees, silent, enduring the journey to our destination. By the time we disembarked, the blood on my body had congealed into clumps, and bits of dried blood flaked off whenever I moved slightly. I must have looked frightening because people hurried their steps when they passed by me. The blood-soaked clothes that had dried were stiff and uncomfortable, making my skin itch and ache. After enduring the journey, we reached what looked like a long-abandoned hospital, and I rushed into the restroom. Only after I put on the clothes provided by a kind stranger did I feel alive again. As I walked through the corridor to the dining hall, I saw many people in the courtyard shouting loudly. Those people are mad, driven insane by the music in their headphones. I turned to see Wyatt. I didn't want to talk to him, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I couldn't help but ask, driven mad by what? The music in our headsets, designed by psychologists. It was meant to use psychological suggestion and hypnosis to erase feelings of guilt, but unfortunately, it failed. His gaze turned towards the window, and I immediately understood what he meant by failure. I also felt relieved that I hadn't worn the headset long enough to turn into one of those screaming people outside. As I stared out the window, lost in thought, Wyatt continued, "When I went to get food, I sneaked up to the command vehicle and saw several people in lab coats monitoring us through security cameras. They couldn't hide it anymore and told me everything." "Sorry, there wasn't time to explain to you," I pressed him incredulously. "Is it that simple?" Wyatt nodded helplessly. They had gradually noticed people losing their minds, realizing this treatment was ineffective and were preparing to terminate the experiment. The word experiment stung me. Were we just lab rats? Our conversation was interrupted by the smell of food. God knows how many days it had been since I had a proper meal. The aroma instantly awakened my taste buds. Nothing was more important than filling my stomach. I carried a plate piled high with food, weaving through the seats. The dining hall was packed, and there was nowhere to join a table. Suddenly, I stopped dead in my tracks, unable to move, because I saw my mother, still in her old clothes, sitting in a corner eating slowly. Her figure blurred as I burst into tears and ran to her, calling out, "Mom." All the hardships and pain I had endured found an outlet, and I sobbed uncontrollably on her lap until Wyatt found me and helped me up. I took the tissue he offered and wiped away my tears and runny nose, surprised to find that my mother was still eating. Her plate was nearly empty, which meant she had continued eating while I cried on her. How could this be? She was my mother, the one I had been separated from for days. Wyatt tugged at my sleeve, signaling me to look around. Only then did I notice that everyone was off. They were all heads down, eating, completely uninterested in the melodrama of a mother and daughter reunion, not even glancing up at me. "Something isn't right here. We should leave," Wyatt whispered. I glared at him. "You wanted to come, and now you want to leave. If you want to leave, you leave." "I'm not going." Before he could respond, I threw myself back into my mother's arms. "Mom, it's Maud. Look at me. What's wrong with you?" My mom pulled out a tissue to wipe her mouth and smiled at me. "Oh, it's Maud. You're here too. Have you eaten yet?" "I've finished my meal. Come sit with me." After she spoke, she gently pushed me away and walked towards the exit. I stood frozen, feeling for the first time in my life that I had mistaken someone else for my mother. This woman wasn't my mom, although she wore the same face. My real mom cared deeply about me. Even if I accidentally hurt my foot with a stool, she'd inspect it closely after removing my socks. I was her only kin. How could she be so indifferent, so unfamiliar? It wasn't until her figure disappeared into the exit that I snapped back to reality and chased after her. I finally caught up with her in the lounge on the second floor. She stood by the door, whispering to someone in camouflage. They occasionally glanced over at me, which made me uncomfortable. When the person in camouflage finally left, I couldn't wait to approach her. "Mom, it's me. Have you forgotten about me?" My mom held my face and kissed it repeatedly, tenderly replying, "How could I forget, my silly child? Dear, Lee said I should treat you better. From tonight, you'll sleep with me." As she turned to prepare the bed, I stood at the doorway, unsure what to do. She had kissed me. It had been years since she had done that, but that wasn't the point. The point was that I felt all of this was taught by the person in camouflage. She had no real affection for me. We were strangers. "Mom, what has happened to you?" I didn't spend much time with my mom, except for meals and sleep, as she spent most of her time working outside. Behind the hospital, a large piece of wasteland had been cultivated, sprouting seedlings. It seemed they intended for us to stay here permanently. During meals and brief rest periods, I tried to confirm her identity by asking about things only the two of us knew. She could answer smoothly every time. This left me confused again, as if the person in front of me was indeed my mom, just not as loving as before. What had happened to my mom? This question troubled me for a long time, affecting how I treated Wyatt. One day, Wyatt approached me. "Maud, something is really off here. Let's escape together." I shook my head and refused. "Maud, Wright is infected. I saw him frozen in the vegetable garden. Then they came with a bulldozer and took him away." I still shook my head. He grabbed my shoulders anxiously. "What's wrong with you? Are you even listening to me? Many children are missing. A lot?" I coldly shrugged off his hands and firmly refused. "If you want to leave, then go." "I'm not going anywhere. My mom is still here." I walked away without looking back, but I could still hear him shouting behind me, "She's not your mom anymore. Wake up, Mom. Is she no longer my mom?" Later, Wyatt disappeared too. I didn't know if he had escaped or been infected. Each day, children were getting infected, and everyone seemed indifferent, making me numb as well. Finally, the day for surgery came. Along with 11 other children, I was taken to the basement. Since my scalp was injured and couldn't grow hair, I skipped the step of shaving my head and was the first to be led into the surgery room. I was strapped to the operating table when they were still preparing the surgical instruments. A person dressed as a doctor approached me and asked, "Little girl, are you nervous?" I nodded and asked, "When will you administer the anesthesia?" He extended his broad, warm hand to gently touch my bald head and kindly replied, "There's no need for anesthesia, most brain surgeries don't require it." I was shocked and my mouth fell open. "No anesthesia, you're going to cut into my brain while I'm still awake." You've misunderstood, we don't need to make an incision." He pulled down his mask, made a funny face at me, and continued, "We just need a long spike, which we'll insert gently through your nostril." I became even more frightened and clutched the corner of his coat as I anxiously asked, "Will I die then?" "Of course not. Let me tell you a secret. I've performed this surgery thousands of times and have never once failed." "Does it really only hurt for a moment?" "To be precise, it won't hurt at all. It'll feel like having a severe cold or sand in your eyes." Relieved, I let go of his coat as he went to prepare and put on his gloves. I stared at the shadowless lamp overhead, and my thoughts drifted back to the night I escaped from school. That night was a narrow escape from death, and I had a feeling that after today's surgery, it would be like being reborn, but I was still a little nervous. I have this problem where I get very talkative when I'm nervous, and it was even worse when he inserted the shiny spike into my nose. "Doctor, why do I need this surgery? Have I been infected too?" "Not yet. But if we don't operate, we'll all be infected sooner or later." "Did you also undergo the surgery?" "Yes, I was among the first batch to undergo it. One of my colleagues lost his hearing because of the surgery, but that hasn't stopped him from being a good doctor." My palms began to sweat, but I knew I couldn't escape it. So I quickly changed the subject. "Doctor, have you performed surgery on my mom too? She seems different than before." "I don't know your mother, but given your age, it's likely someone has already operated on her." After the surgery, people do change somewhat, mainly in how they express emotions. They might seem a bit detached. I excitedly nodded. "Yes, detached. It's like I can't feel her love anymore." "Don't move." He sternly reprimanded me. "We've conducted research, and this disease is caused by a viral brain disorder that triggers abnormal nerve growth. The affected brain tissue is responsible for emotions, so if humans experience persistent emotional fluctuations, such as sadness or guilt, it can easily trigger the condition. So, you're removing brain tissue, but why did all the adults undergo surgery first, and only now it's our turn?" "The children. Most of my friends who escaped with me have almost all died. Because your brains are still developing and are more complex than those of adults. If adults don't fare well in the surgery, the worst that can happen is they become blind or deaf, adding a burden to society. But it's not the same with you children. You are the future of humanity, so we must be extra cautious and careful." Clang! The sound of a hammer striking the spike resonated as I felt it penetrate my crown, giving me a sudden enlightening sensation. "So, just by having this surgery, we won't get infected, like how diabetic patients need to amputate infected feet or gallstone patients need their gallbladders removed." "Exactly." He leaned in closer to look at my face. "Now, describe your mother to me." "My mom used to have a really bad temper, but I don't blame her. She actually had it quite tough." Clang! "Ouch, she's actually very fragile inside, and can only defend herself by being aggressive and domineering." Clang! "Anything else?" "Well, she's just a woman. My mother is quite ordinary. Of course, all mothers are great in the same way, so there's not much to say about that." "All right, the surgery is done. It didn't hurt at all, did it?" No pain." I was helped off the operating table and walked alone down the long corridor. My mother was waiting for me at the exit. She nodded slightly when she saw me come out. I nodded slightly back at her. She turned and walked upstairs, and I followed her. Suddenly, I felt that this way of interacting wasn't too bad.